one of the big questions with the application in calculating the average payroll cost is the time period that that you're supposed to use. There's been confusion where at first it looked like it was trailing 12 months from the date of the application. Then there was I can't remember. It's been so many different iterations, but guidance saying, well, no, you really use 2019 as your calculation of average payroll. And then with the interim rule, it kind of jumped back to say, no, you really need to use the trailing 12 months. And people are struggling with, well, do you reduce gross payroll by withholding and FICA? And some people are saying, no, you don't have to if you use 2019 if you look at the act, but then if you use trailing 12 months, you have to reduce it by withholding and FICA for the period from February 15th through June 30th. So it's one of the most basic parts of the application is causing a lot of confusion, and the difference can be, significant when determining the loan amount, whether you use gross payroll or whether you use it net of withholding and FICA. So that's something that as we've been speaking with our clients, we're saying we just don't know. There's too many conflicting interpretations and information on it. So we're telling our clients right now to do it both ways, to submit the information with clear transparency of how you got to that average payroll costs and show that to the lender. Because it seems like with the application, the lender is the one that's going to give final approval of the amount in the calculation of the loan. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on that.
Yeah, this is Scott. I'll just add this. So Senator Marco Rubio, who's chairman of the Small Business Committee and basically the author of this whole entire program, he sent out a tweet, and people can pull it up, but his thinking on this has been gross payroll would be applied to calculation to ensure federal tax withholding and FICA burden isn't on the small business. So I think, clearly you're going to start seeing more pressure put on Treasury and SBA and DC here to provide a little bit more clarity on that. But I think the advice that you just gave was very sound in saying, here, we're not trying to hide anything, and we're also trying to show you our work in our applications. And then that helps the lender make the best decision. And by the way, as long as you're working with an SBA lender, they've had experience with these programs. They know what works. They know what a good application looks like. And so presenting that to them, it's on the lender to help guide the businesses to present the best application that they can accept. So I think that's great advice to do that. But I think we will start seeing a little bit more hopeful clarity. If it's already at the chairman of the Small Business Committee level and he's tweeting about it, I think that shows that enough people are raising this issue that the government needs to provide more guidance on it.
Yeah, that's good to hear, Chuck. The the other big piece that came out after the act was passed, I think Alex mentioned it, was the requirement that they use 75% of the loan proceeds for payroll costs. But then, and again, getting to the last question, in the calculation of the average payroll costs, it says that gross payroll is used to calculate the average payroll cost, but the allowed use of the proceeds, the loan proceeds, in order to assure the maximum amount of loan forgiveness was to exclude, you couldn't use the lender, the borrower couldn't use it, the loan proceeds, to pay for FICA and withholding taxes. And and I understand that you have to add healthcare costs and retirement costs, but if you kind of do the math, it almost seems like no loan would get fully forgiven because you'd never hit that 75% to be spent on payroll costs unless you frankly had a very rich retirement component, retirement plan or benefit plan component. So that's another one that just like, well, how, why would you calculate average payroll costs using gross pay, but then when you're using the loan proceeds, you can't use the loan proceeds to pay for federal withholding and FICA. It's counterintuitive to what we think the spirit of the loan is. So another one that came out, and we were debating this a lot with my partners. If you read the act and you read the definition of compensation, it appears to exclude the type of compensation owners of a partnership receive. So therefore, partnerships of an active business, for instance, doctors, attorneys, engineers, a lot of them, those are companies built as partnerships. The way you read the law, their compensation is not allowed to be utilized. Even the first 100,000 of their compensation is not allowed to be utilized in determining the loan amount. And I don't know if anyone has any insight into that, or what do you think the government's thought process was in leaving out a significant portion of the population for calculating it?
This is Chuck. I suspect that the intent of this was to provide funding for entities that had employees. Now, if an entity has employees or has contractors or something to where they can apply for these funds, then that becomes clouded. And maybe that's part of this. We just don't know. And again, it's, you can interpret these things conservatively or liberally. We just don't know.
Yeah, and this is one that, a physician group, an accounting firm as well, attorneys, they're all going to have non-owners that they can apply for. But, usually these type of organizations are, have a lot of owners that are being excluded from the, from the calculation. And look, I understand that they're probably more of the hired paid persons, but you already have that governor of $100,000 limit that's already set in there. So it just, to us, it doesn't make sense, and we weren't comfortable reading the act to say that you really should be including those type of salaries in the loan calculation. So maybe that's something that we can, get some more clarity on, hopefully in the days to come, because that's significant.
It's a big portion.
It is a big portion. It's huge. And so this next one's for Alex and Scott. What further guidance and updated interim ruling will come from the SBA and Treasury to, kind of cover some of these outstanding issues?
Yeah, this is Scott. I'm happy to jump in on that one first. So basically, the trick is following Treasury's website. They've been putting a lot of the updates, and that's what Alex and I have been doing, is kind of hit and refresh. And including last night, I think around 10 o'clock, they put out a new rule on affiliation. There's been a very strong outcry from startups and private equity folks that needed more clarification, and so they provided a specialized rule just on that issue last night. We think that there's going to be some further guidance early next week, so they're working over the weekend trying to address some of these issues that are brought up. I would also note that there was a Q&A document that has now started on Treasury's website. I wouldn't say it's extensive right now, and it's mostly focused on providing answers to lenders, since they want to get all the lenders on board to maximum capacity to get these loans. But I would say that I think we'll start seeing a little bit more probably on Monday and Tuesday, some more information, if not sooner, on some of these issues that are coming up.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
And the only thing I would just add, in the interim rule that they put out, they also they stated they're going to give more on loan forgiveness, so expect more to come from there. They asked for comments, that kind of, looking forward. I think some of these issues brought up, there's a big kind of need to get further clarification, kind of go through the directions that they mentioned on their guidance, and kind of submit the comments. I think that's helpful, and I think they will pay attention and kind of help alleviate some of the problems there. But like I said, they do have the ability to kind of make rulemakings without the typical process, so they're able to get these out as quickly as possible once they do see issues come up, and as we expect them to do, and they'll just hopefully address them as they come in and address them quickly.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Alex and Scott.